"Excuse me, sweetheart. I think I've forgotten where I am." The words came out so softly that Della Voss almost didn't hear them over the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant beep of the checkout scanners. She turned from the shelf she'd been restocking, her lower back aching, her feet numb inside her discount sneakers, and found an elderly man standing in the middle of the aisle, looking not lost exactly, but untethered, like a boat that had drifted just far enough from the dock to feel the current. He was well into his 80s, white hair neatly combed, a wool overcoat that had been expensive once and still carried that dignity. His hands, spotted with age, held nothing. No phone, no list, no anchor. Della was 25. She had been on shift for 9 hours. Her dinner had been a granola bar at 3 in the afternoon. There were 16 more items on her restocking cart and a manager who clocked her bathroom breaks. She set down the box of soup cans and walked toward him. "That's okay," she said gently. "Where are you trying to go?" He looked at her with eyes that were still sharp beneath the confusion, pale blue, the kind that must have been striking once and honestly still were. "I was looking for chamomile tea," he said quietly. "My wife used to drink it every evening. I thought—" He paused, something flickering across his face that was older than embarrassment. "I'm not sure why I came in, truthfully." Della understood immediately that this wasn't really about tea. She'd seen this before, not often, but enough. The grief that disguises itself as errands. "Come on," she said. "I'll show you." She walked slowly. Slower than she needed to. She asked his name, Garrison, and told him hers. She didn't push for more. Some silences deserve to be walked through, not filled. She found the chamomile on the middle shelf and handed it to him. He held the box for a moment without looking at it. "She passed 14 months ago," he said. "I still buy it. I don't even drink tea." A small broken sound that was almost a laugh. "I suppose it's a habit of hoping." Della felt something press against the inside of her chest. "I think she'd be glad you still come looking," she said softly. Garrison looked at her then, really looked, the way people do when something unexpected reaches them. "You're very kind," he said. "People are usually—" He stopped, shook his head. "Never mind. Thank you, Della." She walked him to the register, helped him through the self-checkout, because the touchscreen confused him. And then, because it was dark outside, and he'd mentioned offhandedly that he'd walked from somewhere nearby, she asked the front desk to call him a cab, used her own employee discount card to cover the small transaction fee, and stood with him by the entrance until it arrived. She didn't think anything of it. She went back to her cart. She finished her shift. She drove home in a car with a check engine light she'd been ignoring for 2 months because she couldn't afford the diagnostic. She didn't expect anything. She never did. That was simply who Della Voss was. 4 days later, a black limousine pulled up to the curb outside Calloway's grocery at exactly 11 a.m. Della was outside on her 10-minute break, sitting on the concrete step, eating an apple and reading 3 pages of a paperback she'd had for a year. She looked up at the car the way everyone did, briefly, then back to their own lives. Then the door opened. A man stepped out, tall, maybe 33, dark coat, the kind of composed face that had clearly learned composure the hard way. He looked around, then looked directly at her. "Della Voss." She stood slowly. "Yes?" "My name is Reed Garrison. My father is Garrison Calloway." The name hit the air between them, and Della blinked, because Calloway was the name on the grocery chain. The very building she was sitting outside of. Garrison Calloway had founded it 40 years ago, built it into a regional institution, and quietly stepped away from public life after his wife died. The man she'd walked slowly down an aisle, talking about chamomile tea, was the reason she had a job. She didn't know what her face did in that moment. Reed, watching her, seemed to soften slightly. "He'd like to speak with you," Reed said, "if you're willing." They drove to a quiet office building nearby, not flashy, tasteful. Garrison was seated in a chair by a wide window, looking out. When Della entered, he stood with the careful effort of a man who refuses to stop standing for people. "You came," he said warmly. "Of course," Della said. She wasn't sure what else to say. He gestured to a chair. She sat. Reed stood near the door, present but not intruding. There was something in the way he watched his father that told a long, complicated story about love and worry and a son who had rearranged his life around someone else's grief. Garrison spoke quietly. He explained that after his wife passed, he had gone through a period that his doctors called depression and he called lost. That he had begun walking into places, stores, parks, pharmacies, not to buy anything, but because emptiness is easier when there are other people nearby. That day at the grocery, he'd gotten turned around, genuinely confused, and had expected nothing, because lately, nothing was what most people offered. Then Della had set down what she was doing and walked slowly beside him. "I've met a lot of people," Garrison said, his voice careful and low, "in a long life of meeting people. And I know the difference between someone performing kindness and someone living it." He looked at her steadily. "You live it," Della felt her throat tighten. She said nothing. "I'm establishing a foundation," he continued, "in my wife's name. It supports working families and education, emergency funds, housing assistance. I need someone to run the community outreach program, someone who understands what it is to need help and still choose to help others." He paused. "Reed tells me I should offer you the position properly." "So I am." Della looked at Reed. He met her gaze, steady, genuine, with something careful underneath it. She looked back at Garrison. "I don't have a degree," she said honestly. "I know," Garrison replied. "I have enough people with degrees. I need someone with character." The silence was long and honest and warm. "Yes," Della said finally. "I'd be honored." Later, walking out, Reed fell into step beside her for a moment. "He talked about you the whole drive home that evening," Reed said quietly. "He said you walked slowly. He noticed that." Della looked at him. "I just didn't want him to feel rushed." Reed was quiet for a moment. "That's exactly what he said." He glanced sideways at her. "Thank you for seeing him." She understood that Reed wasn't only talking about that one afternoon. He was thanking her for seeing his father as a person when his father had stopped feeling like one. Months later, Della sat in a real office with warm light and a chair that didn't hurt her back, coordinating assistance for 43 families. She kept a box of chamomile tea on her desk. She didn't drink it either, but it reminded her of why she was there. Kindness never announces where it will take you. It only asks that you set down what you're carrying and walk slowly beside someone who needs you. That is always enough.
If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and comment.
Let's spread more stories of kindness and hope together.